While Western culture spent decades debating how much fathers should help, Japan built a word for a father who was never a helper to begin with. One word: national policy. And it is changing what we know about child development. Brain scans of children show that a father's specific style of play builds parts of the brain that a mother's doesn't. Not better, not worse, different. A distinct input the child's developing nervous system cannot get anywhere else. Western fathers were never told that. Nobody gave it a name. And the phrase, "I'm helping out today," the one you probably said this weekend, is the exact phrase Japan's most involved fathers never say, because it is not true. 3 Japanese concepts. Stay for the last one. In Japan's FY 2024 data, paternity leave uptake reached 40.5%. In 2022, it was 17%. That kind of cultural shift does not happen by accident. It happens when a behavior gets a name, a campaign, and a government project behind it. Japan proved that culture can move, fast, once a word exists to carry it. That word is where we start. Here's the objection I hear most often from fathers. "I'm just not the nurturing type. Rough play, fun energy, that's what comes naturally to me. The soft stuff is her thing." Here's what the research shows. The father's instinct, active, physical, high-energy play, is the nurturing input, not a lesser version, not a substitute. But only when the father stays calm and in control of it. The same play with a less regulated father shows the opposite effect. The instinct was never the problem. The pace was. It starts with one word. The first word is Ikumen. In Japanese, it is written Ikumen, 2 parts. Iku comes from ikuji, meaning childcare. Men comes from Ikumen, a cool, admirable man. Put them together and you get something Western languages have no equivalent for. A man who is admirable because he raises children. Think about that for a second. Not admirable despite it, not praised for helping out. Admirable because he does it, and because he does it as his own thing, not in service to someone else's. The word was coined in 2009. By 2010, Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare had built a national initiative around it, the Ikumen Project. They did not write a pamphlet. They changed the name of what fathers were supposed to be. But wait, it gets crazier when you look at what Western culture built instead. We provide, because that is what fathers do. We play on weekends, because that is our time. We help with bedtime, when she needs a break. 3 sentences. All of them frame fatherhood as a support role in someone else's story. That's because we've turned fatherhood into a shift schedule, present for the highlights, absent for the maintenance, and quietly called the highlights quality time. Japanese fathers don't frame it that way, not because they are more evolved, because the language doesn't give them the option. The key question Ikumen replaces is this. Western fathers ask, "How can I help more?" Ikumen fathers don't ask that question because the children were never anyone else's job to begin with. But naming the role is just the start. To understand how it actually changes a child's brain, we have to look at the second word. Now let's go back to that image. A Saturday morning, a tatami floor, a father and a sleeping toddler breathing in sync, a hand resting still on a small back. He is not babysitting. He is practicing something called Fusei. In Japanese, Fusei translates to paternal nature, not paternal duty, not paternal role, nature. Something that exists independently, not in service to the mother's bond, not as a backup system. A distinct developmental input the child needs from this specific person. Here's what's fascinating about what happens developmentally when a father shows up this way. Developmental psychologists call it the activation relationship, a term coined by researcher Daniel Paquette and his colleagues. It describes how a father's style of engagement, rougher, more unpredictable, more challenging than typical caregiver interactions, activates the child's capacity to regulate emotion in new environments. It is one of the strongest predictors of emotional resilience in children. But here's what the research shows about the mechanism, and this is the part most people miss. The brain building only happens when you stay the calm eye of the storm. Not calm instead of playing hard, calm while playing hard. The child's nervous system reads the father's regulation first, then follows. So the next time you're in the middle of rough play and it starts escalating, before you either stop it or match the energy, pause. Drop your voice one register. Stay in it. Give it 15 seconds. That pause is the developmental input. Activation is about energy, but our final concept, the one encoded into the Japanese writing system itself, is about the exact opposite. And it is the one thing Western culture has told fathers to be most afraid of being. Here's where Western assumptions about Japanese fatherhood usually break down. People assume that because Japanese children are associated with calm and self-regulation, the upbringing must be disciplined, even cold. The opposite is what the research suggests. The third concept is Yasashisa. It translates roughly as gentleness, tenderness. But here's the part that stops me every time I think about it. Look at the kanji yu. Show the character yu being drawn stroke by stroke. Then visually separate and highlight its two component meanings. Tender on one side, excellent on the other, before merging them back into one. This single character fuses two meanings that Western framing has always kept separate: tender and excellent. Not tender or excellent. Not tender despite being excellent. The same stroke, the same character. The language never separated them. Here's my honest opinion. That is not a coincidence. That is a cultural assumption encoded into the writing system itself. That the capacity to be gentle with a child is not the soft, lesser mode of fatherhood. It is the excellent mode. The same hand that drives the car, that carries the heavy bag, that fixes what is broken, on a small back, doing nothing but staying still. That is Yasashisa. That is the thing that lives in children long after childhood is over. Not in memory, in the body. Think about that for a second. Now, the one thing I told you I would be honest about. Japan's paternity leave policy is, on paper, the most generous on earth. Roughly 50 weeks at majority pay. And for most of the last decade, almost no one used it. The Ikumen ideal and the salaryman reality existed in parallel. The gap is closing. 40% is real progress, but it is not closed. I am not sharing this as a disclaimer. I am sharing it because the honesty is the point. A good word is not enough. It has to be lived. Now, I want to be honest because this matters. Japan did not solve the structural problem of overwork. It named the ideal, built a campaign around it, and moved the number. That is not nothing. But the principle that a father's presence is not help, it is input. That principle does not require a policy. It requires a decision. And that decision is available to you tonight. So here is your practical takeaway. Pick one thing tonight: the bath, the book, the last 5 minutes before the light goes off, and make it yours, completely. Not a favor to her, not a backup plan, not, "I'll do it if she needs a break." Just yours. Do it every night, without pressure, without reward, just repetition, just expectation, just trust. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to be softer or gentler or more patient than you are right now. You need to be the consistent, regulated presence your child's nervous system is already looking for. Give it 3 weeks. Watch who your child starts to become. 3 words tonight: Ikumen, the admirable man who raises children. Fusei, the paternal nature that is distinct and irreplaceable. Yasashisa, the gentleness that the Japanese language never separated from excellence. These aren't Japanese secrets. They're human truths, and they're available to every father starting tonight. Western fathers ask, "How can I help more?" Japan's involved fathers don't ask that question at all, because the children were never anyone else's responsibility to begin with. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with another parent who needs to hear it. And if you want more on the research most parenting books never mention, subscribe. There is a lot more coming. See you in the next one.